Welcome to CivilNet. My guest today is Ambassador Edson Monteiro from Brazil. We have invited the ambassador to come to our studios as part of our series called Ambassadors of Goodwill. Ambassador Monteiro, welcome to CivilNet.
Thank you so much. A pleasure being here.
It's always a pleasure for us to have you here. We are neighbors, actually, here at CivilNet. And the reason why we've asked you to come at this particular juncture, obviously, is because I think most of us in Armenia and probably most of the world associate Brazil with football. And because we are in the middle of the World Cup taking place in Brazil, we thought it would be an opportune moment to talk to you about it. Aside from the excitement of the games, aside from Europe losing out to South America. It happens, yeah. There's also been, a lot of controversy surrounding the World Cup. In 2007, when Brazil did win to host the games, it was at a time when the Brazilian economy was doing relatively better than it was now. The economy had expanded by 4.5%, inflation was under control, and I suspect that most Brazilians, or all Brazilians, were thrilled. Now, so many years later, as the games are taking place, we have been seeing on a lot of the major news networks about protests and a lot of the citizens being unhappy with the way money is being spent, and really at the end of the day, what remains for Brazil? How would you address these issues?
Okay. Well, thank you very much. As I said, it's a pleasure being here. It's a pleasure talking about Brazil in general, Brazil, Armenia, if we can, and also about the World Cup. If you had asked me a month ago the same question, you would feel that I would perhaps be a bit nervous. Because, of course, in the time leading up to the first game of the Cup, what was catching the attention of the world were the complaints voiced on the streets by people who did not agree that we should have the World Cup in Brazil and spend the money we are spending on organizing it, while we are still a developing country and we still have many problems to take care of. And as they say, the money could better have been spent on education, health, public transportation. Now, today I feel more comfortable. Why? Because as I was saying a month ago to other friends, it's all right if some people have a different opinion. This is democracy after all. Brazil is a democratic country. And they feel the way they feel, and they have the room we give them to express it. But I said many times, remember that it's never 1 million people. It's never 100,000 people. It's 1,000, 2,000, a few hundred people protesting, which is quite normal. Where are the other 200 million Brazilians? And I said, I think they are waiting for the Cup because for them, for the majority of them, this is very important. We are the country of football. We have always accepted that's one of the labels we have. Brazil has been in every World Cup, has won 5 times. We love football. So having the Cup in Brazil is a big thing for many of the Brazilians who will not have the chance to travel to Germany or to Italy or to South Africa to watch something so important for them. So it was a good gift for the people, and believe me, the government was thinking politically, not just in terms of football or economics, when they accepted to have the World Cup. This is a way of telling the people that, yes, we want to see you happy with what you like and what we can offer. Now, is it a wrong thing to do because now the economy is not as good as it was in 2007? Well, what can we do? Up to 2007, Brazil, like many countries, were growing. China was pulling, perhaps, everyone. And we were having some very good results in many aspects of our economy. 2008. Now, we don't have to remember what happened in 2008.
The economic global downturn.
The world changed, and Brazil is dependent on the world economy. Brazil is not a small country. We have a lot of people. We have a huge domestic market. We have many resources. We have a lot of capabilities in every field. But we are still dependent on exports, our commodities, iron ore, soybean, are basically sold to China. And China slowed down. It had to affect us. Now, but we did not, I can assure you of that, we did not take the situation and accept it. Actually, the Brazilian government took a lot of measures to try and keep the economy growing. And I think the record is not bad. I'd like to show you, if this can be shown, that in 2008, Brazil's total domestic economic product was here, $2 trillion.
Today?
Today, last year, it was 2.14. So it was going up. And we were gaining ground on even the richest countries. This is the list of the richest countries. And we are already here at number 7. Okay? 2014 was not another good year. It was not too good. But we still continued growing a little bit, but we did. How did we achieve this? Because the government fought the crisis with what they could do. First, of course, by putting money into the economy. We have the resource for that, giving a lot of money to the public banks so they could lend on to others, in giving incentives for people to buy houses. We need houses there, cutting in taxes, and also, last but not least, investing in infrastructure. Actually, Brazil has a program for the infrastructure that's called a Program for Growth Acceleration. And a lot of the things that we are doing for the CAP, did for the CAP, were not new things.
They were already programs, right.
Part of this
But
program.
Ambassador, I mean, I think it's fair to say that any country that hosts not only the World Games or the Olympics or any major sporting event, there will always be people in that country, in that particular country, that have issues with the amount of money being spent, how the money is being spent, the transparency, and what really will be the value added for that particular country. Now, as you said, Brazil is a country that is associated with football, and I'm sure it was a great sense of pride for all Brazilians to be able to host it. And the problems that arose before, during, and perhaps after the Brazilian government, you are saying, will be addressing them. We can talk about the role of FIFA and all of this, but I really want to switch gears and talk about Armenia-Brazil relations, if we may.
All right.
Brazil recognized the independence of Armenia soon after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and when Armenia became independent in 1991. There are embassies. Armenia has an embassy now in Brazil. The Brazilian government established an embassy here, of which you are the ambassador. How has Armenian-Brazilian relations grown over the last years? Or perhaps I'll step back and say, why is Brazil interested in Armenia?
You know, some of the people in our Congress would ask, why do we have an embassy in Armenia? You know, it really has to be seen in the context of Brazil's presence in the world. I showed already this idea that, I mentioned this idea that Brazil is already one of the 7 largest countries in the world. But even before we started talking about that, we were talking about ourselves as a global player. Brazil can no longer be just a country with relations to the immediate neighbors, Latin America, Africa, which is also neighbors, Europe, the United States, Japan, as we were until a few decades back. We have been interacting with the world. For which reasons? For political reasons, we can start with that. Brazil has a very active presence in multilateral organizations. It starts there. We were a founder member of United Nations organization. We are in all of the different agencies. And we are a country that tries all the time to bring support to some ideas, to negotiate with as many people as possible, to be, let's say, a force for bringing together countries that want to push for some item on the agenda. Now, it's better to do that with a local presence. You know, if you are not in the country, if you are just talking in New York or in Geneva, it's not as effective as when you are in the country. And this is important for us. For the results we are already getting, but also, why not mention it because everybody will mention that, because Brazil has also aspirations of positions of leadership in these international organizations. We are a candidate for permanent membership in the Security Council of the United Nations. 10 years ago, we would not say that. But
right.
Now we are saying we are a candidate. Why are we a candidate? Well, as I said, we were a founding member of the United Nations. And from the beginning, Brazil was mentioned as a country that had the dimensions and the political presence in the world to be perhaps a member of the Security Council. We have been there a dozen times. We are the country, together with Japan, that has more elections as temporary members of the Security Council, which is already an argument. But it's not that. It's really that Brazil has established this tradition of bringing people together. Okay? And when we opened the embassy in Yerevan, we were expanding our political presence in the world. At the same time, we opened embassies in Africa, in Asia. We are almost in every country in Asia. In Africa, perhaps 35 out of 53. Okay? And what do we do? Because that's what the Congress wants to know. Okay. First thing we do, of course, is political presence, as I said. We are here to show the flag and say Brazil is a friend. And perhaps we can do some things together. And it's happening. Armenia has supported Brazil in many cases where we were candidates for positions in the United Nations, important ones, like Director General of Food and Agriculture Organization, it's now a Brazilian. Director General of the World Trade Organization, it's now a Brazilian. In the second case, there were 9 candidates. And only the Brazilian was coming from a country that had an embassy in Yerevan. It was noted.
Certainly, we all understand that as ambassadors to other countries, you are here representing Brazil, to represent the political aspirations, the economic potential, perhaps. What is the benefit is there a benefit of our relationship? I understand the benefit from your perspective.
Okay, there should be a second aspect to it. Representation is the first one. That's what we are doing here. But there should be then negotiations. We are here to negotiate. Negotiate what? We can negotiate trade agreements if the two countries find that there would be a possibility of expanding it. Investment agreements if the business communities in the two countries feel it can be done. Or we can negotiate cooperation agreements, which is one very important aspect of the current Brazilian foreign policy. We are showing the world that we can cooperate, that we can help. In more than 50 countries, we have cooperation programs in agriculture, in health, in education, especially in the Portuguese-speaking countries. We have developed already some expertise in many areas that we are more than willing to transfer to people. You can ask me for free. Well, to create goodwill.
Sure. Well, Armenia and Brazil have signed a number of bilateral agreements, and there is trade between the two countries. I think in 2013 it was to the tune of 88 million. There's a huge import-export deficit there. I mean, we import $87 million worth of goods, coffee, sugar from Brazil, and we export only about $600,000 worth of goods. So maybe that's one area we need to work on.
Okay. Well, that has become my first problem because I could not honestly go out and do only what I'm supposed to do, which is promote Brazilian exports. That's what I'm here for. I realized very quickly that perhaps I should take a sideways approach to it and tell people, listen, before we increase our exports to you, perhaps you should increase our exports to us. And I've been trying to do something about that. I have visited local institutions like the ADA, Asian Development Agency. I had very good conversations with the director. I visited the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, where I even proposed that they nominate a representative in São Paulo, because they don't have one. I have visited some of the companies. I was very impressed, of course, when I found out that you have this brand that has been so appreciated everywhere, that Churchill picks up as his favorite. And I've been telling people, you know, Brazil these days buys everything as part of our growth process.
200 million population, so there's a huge market there.
A huge market, and with a middle class that is expanding, because that's something that has been happening in Brazil in the past 10 years or more, and it's already made an impact. So you go to a supermarket in Brazil, or you will find products from
all over the world, probably.
So I have been telling people, and even when I visited Brazil this year in March on vacation, but we never take full vacations. We always end up working. I went to São Paulo and I talked to people from the Armenian community, and I said, come on, let's do something about this. Now, it's not easy. Everybody will tell me about the freight, the cost, the distance. I prefer to talk to them about the lack of knowledge. I never believed that freight, transportation, logistics can be an impediment. You will always find a way around it.
Yeah, it's about thinking about the possibilities as opposed to the obstacles, right?
Yeah, yeah. I have been telling people, putting modesty aside, that since 1973, Brazil has been working on export promotion. Until then, we were not thinking too much about it. And we remember that we were very skeptical about some areas. For example, Asia, 1973. Yeah?
Sure.
Asia was just a place far away. Even for iron ore, we were told, leave it to Australia. Let's concentrate on Europe. And today, China is our biggest market. What changed was the logistics and a few other things in the industry, perhaps.
Yeah, sure.
Perhaps. So I've been trying to first make some wake-up calls, and I've been telling people, frankly, modest aside, this is a country you can no longer ignore. You must make an effort. And you have your community there, the Armenian Brazilians who are very successful in business, who are well placed in São Paulo, so that could happen. Officially, we've been telling each other we can multiply perhaps by 3 or 4 our trade. But in practice, there is a lot that we still need to do, quite frankly.
Well, I'm very happy that you are the ambassador, because it seems that you have a great interest in expanding and deepening those ties and those relationships between Armenia and Brazil. But because we started with football, I want to end our conversation with football.
Okay.
So what are the chances for Brazil taking the World Cup?
Well, the chances are good. We never say it's certain, because football, we know very well, is very unpredictable. Things can happen before the game, during the game, that can change, you know, the way things go. But the team is more and more showing that they can work together, which is always a problem. Well, it's a lot of big stars, and making them work together is not easy, but it's beginning to show. And they are playing now more relaxed, in a more relaxed way. In the first game, you could see they were feeling the pressure. In the last game, they were already showing a little bit of their skills, you know, take it easy. And that for us is important. That's part of the Brazilian style of
playing football.
Yeah.
Well, Ambassador Edson Monteiro of Brazil, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come and talk to us about not only football, but about Armenia-Brazilian relations and the future prospects of deepening those relations, and for all the work that you do here. So thank you.
I'm very confident on the future, and if I may just mention before going a couple of things happening, you know about Brazil Television, Globo TV. They are the main player in Brazil, and they have sent a crew to us, to Armenia recently, and they are preparing a program on Armenia. That's a first
Step.
and I'm sure it will start people thinking on our side. Okay?
Well, very well. Very good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'd like to remind our viewers that my guest was Brazil's ambassador to Armenia, Ambassador Edson Monteiro. Thank you for watching CivilNet.